I'm Lisa Rose, and I am the host of the Facebook group, The Missing Voice Picture Book Discussion Group, and I would like to dedicate this Book of Life podcast episode to the victims of the Tree of Life Synagogue.
Jane Breskin-Zalben, author of A Moon for Mo and Mo. I want to dedicate this first to Penny, who loves me almost as much as Sahadi's chocolate raisins, but whom I love more than the sun, the moon, and the stars, and to where it began in Brooklyn many generations ago. And I'd like to dedicate it also to all children who should feel safe and sound and loved and cared for and opened to sharing each other's differences and similarities.
This is the Book of Life. I'm Heidi Rabinowitz. Jane Breskin-Zalben is the author of over 50 books for children. Her recent picture book, A Moon for Mo and Mo, was featured in the Missing Voice Picture Book Discussion Group on Facebook in September 2018. The Missing Voice group was created by another author, Lisa Rose, to bring books about underrepresented populations into the limelight. You may be familiar with Lisa's book, Shmulik Paints the Town. I spoke with Jane and Lisa by conference call in the week following the anti-Semitic attack at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, because I felt it was the right time to talk about stories that model friendships between Jews and non-Jews, and to encourage people to read more books that offer windows into different cultures. During that same week, I worked with a bunch of my favorite women, my posse of snarky Jewish kidlit nerds from across the world, to create a book list addressing anti-Semitism. We crafted a list of picture books and chapter books on the theme of standing up for each other. It's the first in the Love Your Neighbor series of book lists published by the Association of Jewish Libraries. You can find a link to that book list at bookoflifepodcast.com. And please keep an eye on the website for forthcoming entries in the series. Now, let's hear from Jane and Lisa. Jane Breskin-Zalben and Lisa Rose, welcome to the Book of Life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, tell us about the Missing Voice Facebook group.
I really felt that we needed a place to discuss books that are not always highlighted by the major publishers, and right at that time, the We Need Diverse Books movement was starting. And I thought that there were some books that weren't getting their voice in there. So I wanted to do something that I knew that I personally could commit to, and that was read one picture book a month. And then from that, invite the author or the illustrator to talk about it. And people join in for a month that there's a book that interests them, and sometimes, you have a busy month and you can't make it. It's really kind of grown very organically. What motivated it is that I thought that in this world, a lot of the conflict is from lack of understanding of different communities. And I had the privilege of growing up Jewish, but also teaching in an African-American school for my career. My career has all been that. And I have really noticed that there are more similarities than differences in our cultures. And I wanted to create that bridge of understanding.
Lisa, how long have you been doing this? You said a number of years. When did you start it?
I believe that this is my 4th or 5th season. I started in September and I finish in May because June, July, and August I find that there's too much traveling for it to be consistent.
Did you put it out on Facebook? How did you put it out?
Yeah, I started on Facebook and I advertised on my page and I advertised with SCBWI. And my authors and my illustrators, they also helped promote with the chats. It kind of grew very much like word of mouth online. And I'm very happy about that And there's been lots of books that people would not have heard of otherwise. I'm actually proud of myself because sometimes I can pick books before they're award winners, and then after, I would never, ever get that author or illustrator.
Right.
I've been lucky a lot of times. And then also what's really been nice is that it's turned into a community. So when their next book comes out, they share that good news. And then people tell me that they met the author or the illustrator. So it's really been turned into much more than just a Facebook page. It's really been a community, and most of my book suggestions come from members or come from authors contacting me. I know with A Moon for Mo, it was suggested by one of the members. I actually selected a different book for September, and then I said, no, we have to do this because it's Rosh Hashanah. And I asked the author if I could switch months, and they were very gracious and switched it because I do try to have something kind of timely and tied with the calendar if at all possible.
Lisa, what are some of the titles that have been discussed in the Missing Voice Facebook group?
One of the titles that I was really proud of was The Last Stop on Market Street, and that was before Matt De La Pena won the Newbery. And the reason why I chose it was because my daughter is visually impaired, and it was the first time that she saw her cane in a book. And, you know, we always talk about having mirrors in our books. And here I am talking the talk, and and here my daughter was pointing out, like, wow, saw that power of having her cane, and she calls her cane Caney. So as soon as we turned to the page, she went, Caney, Caney's in my book. When I told Matt that online, he was just so touched because he didn't expect that that was the reason why I selected his book. And I really like the story Emmanuel's Dream by Laurie Thompson. That one has such a beautiful first line where Emmanuel was born with 2 eyes, 2 arms, and 1 leg. And it was just so great how it goes through the story that he was missing something, but how much he gained. I think the Jewish books, I'm always kind of astounded. You know, I always think, oh, Jewish people are going to read the Jewish books. But there's been so many other people, oh, I didn't even realize this was a Jewish book. So that has been surprising to me. One of the Jewish titles that I really like to do was The Tree in the Courtyard by Jeff Gottsfeld. It's the story of Anne Frank, but it's told from the tree's point of view.
Recently, Missing Voice discussed A Moon for Mo and Mo by Jane Breskin-Zalben. So let's hear about that book straight from the source. Jane, tell us about A Moon for Mo and Mo.
Moses Feldman lives at one end of Flatbush Avenue, and Mohammed Hassan lives at the other. They meet in a store in Brooklyn. Their mothers are both shopping for both Ramadan and Rosh Hashanah, and the 2 boys meet, and they make a little mischief in the store, and Mr. Sahadi says, don't bounce your ball in my store. Here's a falafel ball and a warm pita bread. This is a better ball to have. And they befriend each other, play in the store a little bit, and then they go their separate ways, and weeks pass, and then they meet each other in the playground playing, and then they go off digging, and there's that moment where the 2 mothers go in a panic, because if anyone's been to Brooklyn, they know that those playgrounds, you cannot find your kids in one flash of a second. I mean, your heart just stops. There are usually hundreds of kids like bees going around. So the mothers search for the children together, and they find Mo and Mo. Mrs. Hassan says, you're the sun and the moon and the stars, and Mrs. Feldman says, and everything in between, and then they hug each other, and they make up to meet each other, have a picnic with the fathers at sundown, and they come together and they bring date cardamom cookies and lamb, and Mrs. Feldman brings her rugelach and her brisket that she's been making. Recipes are in the back of the book. and there's nonfiction about what the holidays are. Interestingly, Rosh Hashanah and Ramadan take place every 30 years at the same time. I see it more as a peace book than necessarily a Rosh Hashanah and Ramadan book. I wrote it around 6 or maybe even 7 years ago, probably even more relevant now than it was then. What happened was I was online at a store in Brooklyn babysitting my first grandchild. She was really tiny, and the name of the store is Sahadi's, and it's in a Middle Eastern and Jewish neighborhood, but Sahadi's particularly is on a block that is more Middle Eastern Arabic stores. Although Charlie Sahadi is Lebanese and Christian, but most of the stores in the area, there's a music store, there are other spice stores, there's a bakery next door from Syria and Damascus. I mean, so it's a very multicultural neighborhood. And I often would shop there with Penny, my granddaughter, and we particularly shop there before Jewish holidays for spices and teas and coffees and all sorts of things that you might not be able to get in other stores. A lot of chefs and famous cooks also shop there. They're known quite well. And we were waiting online. There was a woman right next to me who was wearing a chador, and she was covered, and her little boy and Penny started playing with each other, sort of connecting. And there's always a moment, usually a tiny moment, whether it happens for a novel or for a picture book or for a poem or a short story or a film or whatever, that aha moment, and you go, oh, maybe there's something here.
Jane, you did a live chat with members of the Missing Voice Facebook group about A Moon for Mo and Mo, and so I wanted to ask you, what was that like, chatting with the members of the group through Facebook?
I had never done that, where I was actually typing it out, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed people at the moment in live time asking me questions that I could then respond to, take a split second, think about, and then respond. These were also questions about the nitty-gritty of writing. I find it gratifying in helping and teaching other people to do what I do. It was very nice to know that there were other people out there who had read A Moon for Mo and Mo and appreciated it and were supporting me and asking me questions, because as a creative person, I'm working alone in a room, in a studio, or in front of a computer within my own head. So it was a different experience, and that was enjoyable.
Can you share your response to the illustrations by Meredith Amini?
She did it as a collage. You can see she used different materials and did a lot of photos. My husband and I, in 2005, did a collage book. The process was extremely similar. The reason I'm mentioning it is when I saw her art in the book, I really saw how she, in concept, was using what we did on our book. So I really appreciated it tremendously. In addition, hers was lush in a different way than ours was, because she has Middle Eastern patterns, and her sense of color also is like Matisse, one of my favorite painters ever. And her sense of composition, it's close in perspective. When you think of, let's say, David Wiesner's work, who's doing shot over and under and, different things, whereas hers is more an even view, closer up, which is something I don't think or do as much because I work more Persian miniatures with a tiny 000 brush. She was just bolder, and because of the difference, I really, really loved it. It's so detailed and yet very different than my own work. So I really reveled in that. I loved it. I really think she did a fantastic job.
Lisa, I want listeners to know that you are also the author of a Jewish children's book yourself, Shmulik Paints the Town. So tell us just briefly about that book and how you came to write it.
Well, actually, originally I didn't really intend on it having a Jewish theme. Shmulik is the painter, and he's a bit of a procrastinator. And while he is doing everything but painting, his little dog Ezra helps him paint the mural. And it started out that way. And then I was actually attending a workshop, and much like Jane, with that one magic moment, I suddenly saw the structure of the book, and I set it in Israeli Independence Day because I was an unpublished author, and I noticed that there was not a book about Israeli Independence Day. So I thought maybe I could fill this hole, and sure enough, Car-Ben did accept the book, and then it did later become a PJ Library book. One of the things that I like about Shmulik Paints the Town, and many people tell me about Shmulik Paints the Town, is that the setting is Israel, and that they don't necessarily see it as a Jewish book, more that they're just learning about another place. One of the things that I do when I do my talks, I have a talk, what I learned schlepping with Shmulik, and start out by saying how many of you celebrate the 4th of July and relating Israeli Independence Day to American Independence Day and what you do with your families, and really stressing what the similarities are in our cultures. I like the fact that it's just a book. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Jewish book or a diverse book, and I hope that there is a time where we don't have to have a missing voice picture book discussion group, and it's just a book.
Lisa, during the Facebook discussion of A Moon for Mo and Mo, you brought up the We Need Diverse Books movement, and you also mentioned them earlier in our conversation here. And you had said that you feel Jewish books have been kind of left out of the We Need Diverse Books conversation. So can you talk about that a bit?
Many times that people share diverse books, I do see a lack of Jewish books being mentioned. I do feel that they have been left out of the discussion. In the last several years, there has been an increase in anti-Semitism. That is a whole other discussion by what could be the reasons for that. But I felt that we needed to be included into the discussion. The theme, the missing voice, and really trying to repair the world and make the world a better place, that is such a Jewish concept.
I love the title that you chose. I mean, I think it's really pitch perfect, Missing Voice.
I do want to share that with the PJ Library, I was invited to the Yiddish Book Center, and we happened to be there during the time of Charlottesville. And when you spend your day surrounded by the largest collection of Yiddish books and realizing that the owners either perished in the Holocaust or survived the Holocaust, it gave me more focus in the sense that I can't let this voice die, that this is somehow my turn in the journey of the Jewish people not to let our story be lost and what we value be lost.
I feel that A Moon for Mo and Mo and the Missing Voice discussion group are both on a Tikkun Olam mission to spread peace and understanding. And I'd like to ask each of you to extend that mission now by inviting us, the listeners, to take action to heal the world. So beyond reading and discussing books like this one, what action do you hope that people will take?
So what I would invite people to do is, first of all, it's going to be November in a few days. I'd like them to vote. I'd like them to vote a certain way, but I think people should not be silent. What's going on is pretty shocking in the world, not just the United States, but to have it in the United States has been one of the most shocking things in my life. And I'm not original or different. I think there are plenty of people who feel like I do. So one of the things is to not be silent. For instance, my postman a few weeks ago said to me, I'm invited to my son's wedding in Italy, and I don't want to go because those Muslims could be walking behind me. He's talking about a wedding. He's talking about Italy, and his mind jumps to that. I was shocked and horrified, and I was not silent. I didn't get crazy. I got a very soft, gentle voice. This is a man who delivers my mail every day, and I said to him, I do children's books for a living, and I'm Jewish. I said, and I just did a Jewish-Muslim book. And then I told him how I've traveled the world to different places. And then I went into how he should go and enjoy the wedding. And I put all the positive things about going out there in the world and seeing different people. And it's sort of the way you started, Lisa, at the beginning, about people not knowing each other's differences and maybe being fearful. Instead of enjoying each other's food and the way we dress differently and speak differently and pray differently. But we all love the same way. If we have children, we love them. If we have spouses, we love them. If we have friends, we love them. So, it's not being silent, and that's the key.
I wholeheartedly agree. I try to pick recent books, so a lot of the members have to buy the books or convince their libraries to get them. So my request is to share them, to share those books. My daughter's in elementary school. Right after the horrible tragedy in Florida where there was the shooting in the nightclub, I said to my daughter's teacher, if I was a teacher today, I would read Michael Hall's book, Read, to my class. And not only did she read it to her class, she then talked about it at lunch. And sure enough, over the course of that week, that book was read just about every teacher at that school. So I think when you have a book like A Moon for Mo and Mo, and you read it, tell somebody about it and share that and give that to them. Keep it moving, kind of like that random act of kindness where someone pays for that cup of coffee in line. So instead of paying for Starbucks, keep passing that book down.
Lisa, I agree with you 100%. And I do agree that it comes from the ground up, meaning children and teaching them empathy and kindness and compassion and caring. But that's got to also come from the home, and it also has to come every day into the kitchen from the TV and seeing leaders who are different than what our children are seeing.
Totally. I totally agree with you. But I also know that you got to start somewhere. And I guess that maybe through these books you can make sure that children have empathy for each other and understand the history of how people who have differences and different cultures work together. At the NAACP was also started by Jews.
And with the civil rights movement in the 60s.
That there were Jews that were marching alongside black leaders.
Lisa, seriously, I think you've got your next book.
And this is something that Heidi's going to oh no, we're going rogue here. But one of the things that I always find very interesting is that, the Snowy Day, we celebrate it being an African-American book, but we also forget that the author was Jewish.
Are you guys familiar with the book A Poem for Peter by Andrea Davis Pinkney? About the writing of A Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, and it explains that he was Jewish and that he was inspired by a photograph of this adorable African-American boy, and he created this character, and it ties it all together and shows the parallels in the Jewish and the black experience. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. You should definitely check it out.
Yes, that's great.
Very good. Okay, Jane Breskin-Zalben, Lisa Rose, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, and it was great. I enjoyed talking to both of you.
Me too.
If you enjoy the Book of Life podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/bookoflife. Leave a review on iTunes or a comment on our blog at bookoflifepodcast.com. You can also like our page at facebook.com/bookoflifepodcast. Follow us at twitter.com/bookoflifepod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band. Thanks for listening and happy reading.